Well, good afternoon, everyone. AFR is on your radio. Jay Smith joined here with Jason Price, here to bring you another edition of our show After Further Review. Thanks so much to tuning in. This is coming out of the Rebel Radio 92.1 studios. We have a lot to talk about today, Jason, so let's just go ahead and dive right into it, man, after further review.
Jay, what if I told you that donuts could cost up to $8,000?
You must be referring to the Joyride in Baton Rouge that took place a couple of days ago. LSU student taking that ATV all over Death Valley's field, tearing up a lot of grass.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And honestly, I can't even lie. It sounds like a lot of fun, but I'm not sure if it's worth the jail time. But, you take those kind of risks.
It's funny, and we'll get to this a little bit later in the show. We're going to have a guest come on here in a couple minutes. But I saw in a police report that he actually came back to the field after he came back twice. One was with a buddy of his, and then I think the second time was with his girlfriend. So I guess he felt like he needed to show off. I'm not sure. Seems like a dumb idea, but $8,000 worth of damage to LSU's field. They had, I think, irrigation repair going on at the time of his little joyride, and so they're going to have to redo a lot of that. But we're going to go ahead and transition and bring on our guest for today's show. We got Will Day here with us, and Will is a student worker, currently a senior, over in OMSP, and he does pretty much anything and everything they need him to do. I mean, I guess to start off, Will, talk us through what your primary role is as a student worker over at OMSP.
Yeah, first, thanks for having me on, guys. But so the main thing that I do is video editing. I shoot a little bit too. I produce. I write scripts, but for the majority of the time, I'm in the office on Adobe Premiere editing videos.
Gotcha. And so, when you're editing, I guess, because a lot of people don't always understand how many people are involved with the productions that your office is responsible for. So like the season, there's dozens of people that kind of handle that from start to finish. Talk us a little bit about, what your role is in all of that, and how, you work with full-time members in that department to kind of all be on the same page to achieve that same creative vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so back closer to when I started, the last couple of years, a lot of what I was doing is during the off season, I was doing research on a lot of the stories that we would tell in the season. Like whenever we switched to the land shark mascot, we did a story on the origin of the land shark about Tony Fine, and it was from like January up until September when it was researching that story, finding the videos, finding the story, kind of finding out who we needed to go interview, how to do all that. And so then I would give all that to my boss, and he would go and shoot the interviews and do all that. And that's only half of one show. And then the other half is shooting the games, which was, the bigger operation. So it's for that part of it, the games, it'll be like 10 people working on it, and we've got 3 days to get it done. And then the first half of the show, it's just two of us, but we'll be working on it for 6 months.
So Will, you said that you do pretty much a lot of the editing and like Adobe Premiere and stuff like that. Do you have like a section of film that you have to edit, or do you edit like the entire episode, or what does that editing process look like for you when it comes to like raw footage and the final product?
So we so for the season episodes, it's usually going to be multiple people going on it, but we do a million other videos in between, little short form ones. And probably the most popular one that I've edited is the Lane Train video. Whenever we announced Lane Kiffin, it was the minute-long one with the trains.
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that one was just that was just me the day before the announcement. We didn't even have confirmation that he was going to be the guy at that point, but I knew that this was if he was going to be the guy, it was going to be a big deal, and it needed just a killer video. And if it was anyone else, it was not going to be a big deal. We were not, there wasn't going to be much we could do to make that better. So if for anything smaller like that, it's usually just one person. But whenever it's like the season episode, whenever it's like those 22-minute long things that go to ESPNU, that's going to be usually 3 or 4 people editing it.
Right. How'd you get? I guess we'll go backtrack a little bit. Go back to your roots and how you got started, because you're a little bit older than a lot of college seniors.
Yeah,
You're
I'm 27.
27 years old as a college senior, and that's not because you're on your 8th or 9th victory lap. That's because you were actually out working in the field before you came to Ole Miss. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've been a few different things. Starting off out of high school, I came down here and just figured out I wasn't ready for college, so I went back home to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I was a film projectionist at a movie theater before they were all digital, and I did that for a couple of years, and it was a really cool job, but the writing was on the wall. Everyone was moving to digital. I knew I needed to figure out something else, and so then I started coaching football for the high school up there. I was offense and defensive line coach, was doing a lot of work there, and then that's when I started going back to school. And so, because that was just during the season for the most part, and then while I was doing that, I also started working for a sports talk radio station up there, 92.1 The Ticket, and worked on a morning show there and did a little bit of everything. And then I was 24 and have been doing that for a while, and was finishing up community college, and just realized that I wanted to come back to Ole Miss. It's where my whole family had been. And so I took the leap down here, got the job with Ole Miss Sports Productions, starting off doing audio stuff there, taking the radio experience, but then transitioned over more to the video side, and got to really use like my football knowledge a lot that I gotten from coaching.
So you're talking about like using your experience and kind of transitioning it to Ole Miss. And with all this experience with Ole Miss P, what are some of your aspirations for after graduation and like leaving Ole Miss? Like, do you hope to be in kind of the same production aspect of, say, like a professional team doing promos and like practice videos, or like coach hype videos, like you were talking about? By the way, I was a huge fan of that video.
Thank you.
It's like meeting a celebrity. Right? I loved that Lane Kiffin video.
Thank you.
But do you have any ideas of which way you want to take all this production experience to?
So for the most part, I want to stick with football. That's like, obviously like I coached it. That's my main sport. And so if I could go look, like I've been looking at colleges and at NFL teams, because colleges, there's so many sports that all of them need coverage. It's kind of hard to be able to latch on to football there. I mean, you got to cover all the different things. And it's like, I enjoy the other sports, but the one I know that I'll never be burnt out on football. So it's not like get something in the NFL would be cool. Or I mean, even staying here for a few more years wouldn't be terrible to me. I mean, it's an exciting time to be a Rebel with the Lane Kiffin era starting up. So
for sure. I mean, we've talked about this now the last couple of weeks on the show. What are realistic expectations for Lane the first couple of years? And I know that sometimes, especially with the work that you do and who you're working for, and the access that you have to a lot of those coaches and players, you might be privy to certain knowledge that doesn't necessarily need to become public. But it's definitely, I think, something that a lot of people, like Jason said, it's like he's meeting a legend right now with the guy who made the video. I mean, you take that for granted, but at the same time, like the access that you have and the insider knowledge is something that's really special, and that very few people ever get the chance to actually experience.
Yeah, it's one thing about working. So we work for the athletic department and not necessarily the football team, and so we're doing a lot of our work across they're on the south end of Vaught Hemingway Stadium. We're on the north end, and there's a little bit of separation there where we're not privy to everything that's going on. But being at like I've been at a bunch of the workouts with Coach Wilson Love. I mean, he is a future superstar. You guys know Alabama strength coach Scott Cochran. He just got the job at Georgia, but I mean, he is that sort of level. He's got that sort of energy and that sort of charisma that's going to. I mean, he's been great with the players for one. They've all been talking about this is just way more intense than everything they usually were going through before. I mean, which is always the story. Whenever there's a new strength coach brought in, that's always going to be the story. That it's a lot more energy. It's everything's a lot better, and that. But it's you'd rather have that than the opposite, even though that rarely happens in big time football. So he's trying to. He's working with them, but he is the roster that is inherited is one that still is suffering from the NCAA sanctions, because there's a huge amount of freshmen and sophomores on the team, but the 2017 and 2018 recruiting classes were small. In the 2016 class, which would be the redshirt senior class, a lot of those guys transferred, and so the talent level is not going to be what Lane Kiffin was doing at Alabama. Obviously, he had Derrick Henry, Amari Cooper, O.J. Howard, guys like that, but he never had any sort of great NFL prospect at the quarterback position. The best one, he had the freshman year of Jalen Hurts.
Right.
But he had Jake Coker and Blake Sims before, converted running back. It's pretty similar to number 10 out there on the baseball, or he's number 11 on the baseball field now, but similar skill set to that. Jake Coker, who's to say that Matt Corral could not be as good as that. And so that's something we're going to really see him try to work with. And if he can get that quarterback position up to a high level, it's going to raise the rest of the team.
Oh, I think absolutely. And look, we all know it's the first year. Like you said, the sanctions are still kind of there. There's going to be that transition period. No one is expecting Kiffin to come out and win 8, 9, 10 games. I do think, though, that as we saw with Luke, who was here for 3 seasons, and it got progressively, we went 6 wins, we went 5 wins, we went 4 wins. But what really, in my opinion, kind of did it in for him was and you could point directly to the Egg Bowl and the outcome of that game, but I think also just the talent development. If Kiffin is able to develop the talent, and you might not pull in a top 20 recruiting class for a few years, right? You've got to reestablish yourself. But if he's able to develop the talent and he's able to win a few games, because look, we all know last season you had A&M, you had Auburn, you had Cal, you had Memphis, you had there's probably another one.
State.
LSU, LSU
State.
ended up being a bit, but State at the
yeah.
end.
Auburn was a 1-score game.
Yep. And so if he's able to get over that hump in the next 2 to 3 years, I think that he'll definitely have a long tenure here. But one thing I want to talk about that we probably most people, don't ever see is when you're out there shooting. Give me one good story about something that's just gone wrong, and how you've had to bounce back or figure out a solution because. You're out there on the field. You can't just run back to the office. Like, what do you do?
Let me see.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
Will. Putting you on the spot.
Got to find my most embarrassing shooting story. It's kind of what's coming to mind is kind of some more technical issues. Like one time, so on a camera, on a lens, a lot of times you'll have what's called a doubler that it zooms you in twice as much as your normal zoom lens would be able to. And it's something you can turn on and off. And for the most part, you're not going to be using it. I was doing an in-venue game for baseball. So I was just shooting for the Jumbotron. And it was during the Love Is Gone. I was down on the field and shooting the players, like walking up and down, trying to shoot them. And my boss was just saying there's something wrong with their shot. Where are you so zoomed in for? What's going on? And I was trying to do, and I couldn't get it. And they I forget which players it was, but typically during the real breakdown part of Love Is Gone, the players come out and they do some sort of dance or something.
Right.
I've seen guys do backflips. Sinquest Golson back in the day was always good for some cool dance move. But I basically just missed all of it, and I couldn't figure out why. And it turned out I just had my doubler on, and so everything that I was normally shooting, which I thought would be fine, was coming in twice as zoomed in. So it's not a terribly embarrassing story.
Right.
I'm sure there's something else I'm forgetting that I've just repressed in my mind, trying to not think of. And then I'm going to think of it tonight when I'm laying in bed and be like, oh no, that thing, should have said that. But
I'll tell
anyway.
you, I know Jason has another quick question, but the worst story that's ever happened to me is when I was an undergrad at Clemson and I was shooting a soccer game. And this was the men's soccer tournament. The teams, the higher seeds will host the actual games. This was like a round of 16 or round of 8. It was a pretty big game. and we were going live on air. I was camera one, so I was the game cam, and all you're really doing for camera one is you're just panning back and forth.
Yeah.
And my tally went out, which is, and for those who don't know who are listening, the tally light is the light that the director will use to let you know, hey, your camera's on air. Your camera's live. And so the tally light went out, and my audio comms went out. So I could not hear anyone, and I could not tell when I was on air. And so I just kind of had to ad-lib the whole first half. They fixed it for the second half.
45 minutes.
But it was 45 minutes of just sitting there going, well, I hope this is what they want.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea.
It sounds like you were on standby for the entire time, just wondering whether or not
It was nerve-wracking.
It was your stuff.
Because immediately you think, what have I done wrong?
Yeah.
You're like, what did I must have done something wrong. I hit a switch.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, so like you were talking about shooting in venue stuff for the Jumbotron, and I'm guessing you've done that more than the one time that you had your doubler on. So how do you? Because I know from my perspective, because I've shot in the stands with cameras before, things like that, and I always have kids asking me like, "Ooh," even though I'm not even the one with the Jumbotron camera, they're like, "Ooh, put me on TV, put me on the Jumbotron." How do you deal with that, and what is kind of your way to? I mean, sometimes you can, but sometimes you can't. Can you just tell me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so I've shot like for the venue, and I've shot things that when I'm not shooting for the venue, and typically if the kid is like really annoying, I'm just going to ignore them completely. But if they're sweet and I know there's no chance that they're actually going up there, I'll just kind of pretend like they are or something. Like, but you're in the venue, they'll be able to see that they're not up there right away. Or you can just say, I'm on TV. You're on the SEC network, and they'll always just believe you and go at that. Because I mean that happens. You'll just come up and get knocked on. And the thing is also you don't want them, because you don't want to shoot them and then all of the other little kids see that you're shooting them. Right. They all try to get up and you almost get tackled. Right. I mean, there's no correct answer there, I would say. I mean, you just got to learn to be patient. I mean, yeah.
Well, so if to wrap this, if people want to follow you or connect with you, you have any social media out there? Where can they reach you?
So for the most part, I'm on Twitter. It's at Will Day with 3 L's, WILLLDAY. And I'm not too active for the most part. I just retweet my the videos that I post from the other accounts, but occasionally I'll come in there with some thoughts and everything.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you taking the time, joining us today. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. We're going to cut to a quick break. When we come back, though, we're going to dive into the rest of the show and talk about what some teams can do if they want to get back on track. That's next. Stick with us. Welcome back to the show. Again, this is After Further Review. You're listening to AFR with Jay Smith and Jason Price here from the Rebel Radio 92.1 studios. We appreciate you spending your Tuesday afternoon with us. And we just wrapped up an interview with OMSP's Will Day. He's a student worker over there. Had a lot of fun talking to him. Had some interesting stories and a lot of fresh perspective on a really unique job, a job that very few people have the opportunity to see the behind the scenes of it. And I think, Jason, sometimes we take for granted, because I know that you're also the sports director over at Newswatch, and you're responsible for the sports content that's put out on a daily basis there. But I think sometimes we take for granted just how cool the opportunities we have are and the access that we have. And, it's important to, have someone on like Will to kind of remind you that it's a unique opportunity that we should enjoy to the fullest. I
mean, for sure. Right whenever I got my job as a sports anchor for Newswatch, and the first time I covered a game, a football game on the field, man, I was like a kid in a candy shop. Yeah. I was just like, wow, like I get, as my job, I get to stand on the football field instead of being in the stands and actually be right next to the players and everything. I mean, obviously now that I've done it for almost 3 years, it's kind of just like the same old, but looking at it from like someone else's perspective, like, it's not what people get to do on a normal day. Like just any normal Ole Miss fan doesn't get to stand on the field next to it. And I've had conversations with like DeMarcus Lodge this year whenever he came and just chilled on the sideline, Laquan Treadwell, players like that. So I mean, it's easy to it's easy to kind of think that it's the normal, but talking to Will and getting to hear his perspective,
Yeah.
I love just hearing about, because that's one of the biggest things for me was trying to get the kids to not ask to be on TV. That's why I had to ask the question.
You know, it's 2020 and everyone's been on TV at least once, but you stick a camera in people's faces and they just, so it is funny. But yeah, absolutely loved having Will on for sure. So let's talk a little bit now about how, because football season's coming.
Oh yeah,
it is coming, and for a lot of schools out there, some are looking forward to it, some maybe not. And schools like Florida State, Texas, Michigan, Notre Dame, USC,
Ole Miss as well.
Ole Miss as well. Although it's been since I think the '60s since Ole Miss has won a title. Correct?
Oh yeah, but
it's been a few years, but they did have prominence back in the mid 2010s.
Right.
That obviously they'd like to get back to with Lane Kiffin. But what do these schools need to do to get back on track? I mean, you have Mike Norvell at Florida State. He's obviously coming from Memphis.
Right.
Was very successful there. And, at the time, just, sticking to Norvell for a minute, he was the youngest FBS coach in the nation when he was hired. He was 34 years old. And that's, a really remarkable achievement. He also oversaw one of the most explosive offenses at the prior school he coached at, Arizona State. And I believe he was a coordinator at Arizona State, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know exactly what his position was at Arizona State, but still an impressive resume.
Yeah, Arizona State. He was a quarterback coach and offensive coordinator.
Yeah. And he was at Pittsburgh before that for a year, 2011. He was at Tulsa from 2007 to 2010, and in Central Arkansas is where he started as a GA in 2006. So pretty impressive resume. Do you think that Norvell is going to be able to kind of reinstill that? Because look, with Florida State, right, they are still, it's hard to believe, but they're still probably the second best team in the ACC in terms of just consistent recruiting and not
Right.
falling off. Like Miami has really not panned out.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech has lost a lot of consistency, and other schools like Georgia Tech or UNC
Or
Louisville will have these flashes,
Right.
and you're like, oh, they're going to be good and then they lose it. Florida State, though, has been different. They've been more consistent, but ever since Jimbo left, and when Taggart came in, I think they went 18-21 under Taggart for 3 years. They've been struggling. What do you think they can do to kind of rebuild? Because it's going to take them a couple of years.
I mean, I think they're definitely on the right track hiring Norvell, because myself, I actually wanted Norvell for the Ole Miss head coach job because I wasn't sure if the whole Lane Kiffin thing was going to work out. And I liked Norvell. I had my sister goes to Memphis, and I have been to a lot of Memphis games. And the thing about Norvell coach teams is that whenever they're in a close game, they don't lose sight of the fact that they can win that game. And Norvell seems like he instills a confidence in his team that lets them know we can win this game. They beat UCF this year, I think twice. They beat UCF regular season and for the conference championship. And then I went to a Houston game a couple years back when it was at Memphis, and they pulled out a close win. I love seeing teams and coaches pull out those close wins, even when they're behind or even when they're underdogs. And I think Norvell has a great mindset that he can bring to Florida State, because he can remind them, like, look, it hasn't been that long since this school has won a national championship. I mean, in my opinion, Jimbo Fisher got really lucky with Jameis Winston, having him at the time that that was Jameis Winston's prime, I think it's safe to say.
Well, yeah, and so what I look at when I am trying to figure, can this coach, and it's hard. It's almost unfair because people are expecting a Lane Kiffin or a Mike Norvell to come in and completely, like Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. Like, the program is going to be drastically different after they've coached for 2 to 3 years than it was when they arrived. And in some ways, it should be different, but in some ways, that's completely unfair because a lot of those things are outside their control, and it's hard to manage all those different pieces. With that being said, the problem for Florida State these past few years recently has really been recruiting.
Right.
They went from a number 3 recruiting class in 2014, a number 2 recruiting class in 2015, a number 1 recruiting class in 2016, and then they dropped off. So Taggart's first class was 11th, then it was 22nd, and both of those seasons they went without landing a quarterback. I mean, that's unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
Unheard of. Essentially, they only had 1 quarterback on the roster from their last 4 recruiting classes. They had these guys that committed. Sam Howell committed under Taggart, but then he flipped when Mac Brown was hired at UNC. You had 2 quarterbacks in the 2017 class, James Blackman and Bailey Hockman, but Hockman transferred to NC State. So it's Malik Henry signed in 2016, but he's no longer part of the program. So there was just no consistency in the quarterback position, which, you can have tons of playmakers. You can have all the weapons in the world. But until you have, the conductor of the orchestra putting all the pieces together as the quarterback, it's hard to win a championship. It's hard to compete. It's hard to be consistent. And look, first 2 weeks Norvell was there, he landed 2 quarterbacks, both in the ESPN 300.
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks to the faith that players around the country have in Norvell, just from what he's shown at Memphis and at Arizona State. And I mean, like you said, right when he became head coach, he got 2 quarterbacks, and the last great player that Florida State has had just did the NFL Combine this weekend. Cam Akers, who was the number 1 player in Mississippi, 5-star running back, just left. So it seems like they're going to need a ton of help, and especially when it comes to the offensive line. I'm really looking for Norvell to try as much as he can to throw in different schemes and try to beef up those offensive linemen because, man, they were arguably one of the worst in the country last year.
Yeah.
And so I think Norvell's used to somewhat of a good offensive line with Memphis going against not the most aggressive defenses in the country, but aggressive nonetheless in their conference. So I think that is definitely an excellent pickup for the quarterbacks, and I'm just looking for Norvell to utilize his argument of, you've seen what I can do with schools like Memphis who can compete, can beat schools like Ole Miss. I hate to say it, but
even though they're in the American,
right,
that's still impressive.
I mean, beating an SEC school, so I'm definitely looking for him to use that as evidence.
Okay, so quickly before we move on to the next team that we're going to discuss, let's go through Florida State's schedule. Just quickly, fire off the games. I'll give you their first 3. All right, they got West Virginia, Samford, at Boise State. Should they lose any of those games? I would argue no. They should be 3-0.
I think they should be 3-0. I think they lose to Boise State.
You think they lose to Boise State on the road?
I think they'll lose. I don't think they should.
Right.
But I mean, also you have to look at how Florida State was last year, and
sure, 6 and 7.
And like you were saying, you can't expect them to be a completely different team.
Yep.
So I see. I don't think they should lose any of those games, but I see them losing.
2-1.
Yeah, I have them at 2-1 after
2-1
after week 3.
Opening conference play at NC State, then you host Clemson, and then you host Wake Forest. I'd say they get through that stretch with 2 losses.
Yeah,
I'm at 3-3 right now.
Yeah, I'm not too confident about the NC State game. Definitely have no confidence for Clemson.
Even though they're hosting Clemson, I don't think it's close.
Yeah, I don't think they could be playing. They could be playing in Mike Norvell's backyard, and they're going to lose that game. Wake Forest people. Wake Forest is a sleeper team.
Don't sleep on Wake Forest. I know it's an ACC sleeper team, but this is a Wake Forest team that went 8-5 last year. That's 2 games better than Florida State. So don't sleep on the Demon Deacons. Okay, next 3 up, at Louisville, Pittsburgh at Miami. They're going to beat Louisville. They're going to beat Louisville. They should beat Pitt, but will they beat Miami on the road?
See, Miami is always it's a coin toss.
It is.
Because
It is.
you remember how close that game at the beginning of the season last year in week 0 when they played Florida, how close that game was. And how good Florida turned out to be. I mean, they weren't anything
and look,
crazy.
Pitt was 8-5 last year. So, Louisville was 8-5. Like, those aren't bad teams. Not where they were a couple years ago when Louisville was abysmal.
Right.
It's an 8-5 football team, second in the Atlantic and the ACC. So I give them one win out of those 3. So that puts them at 4-6, right? 4-5. Excuse me, 4-5.
Yeah, 4-5.
So they'd be 4-5, and they would close the season with Boston College at home. That's a win. Syracuse on the road. Syracuse was 5-7 last year. I think they did. Syracuse just after his name is going to escape me. Their quarterback that was so dynamic, such a playmaker. I'll have to look up the name of the Syracuse quarterback, but I don't think Syracuse has the pieces in place. I love Dino Babers, who's a great coach, but I think they're going to lose that game. And then Florida, and I think Florida has way more talent, way more consistency than FSU right now.
Without a doubt. I mean, and the thing, I'm also kind of skeptical about the Boston College game, even though you say that's a go-ahead win. Man, Boston College can upset people sometimes. You never really know. But I have to agree that Florida game is definitely a loss. But I mean, maybe a 6-6 season if they can grind it out.
Well, I think it's a possibility, and we actually have Cole on the phone with us now. Cole has called in. Can you hear us, Cole?
I can.
Okay, man, go ahead. What's your question for us?
I was just interested in what you guys are thinking about Greer Holston. He's had a rough start to the year, and I was excited for him coming back. Thought he would be crucial for our bullpen midweek starters, but he's looked rough. Just interested in what you guys were thinking about that.
I mean, I definitely had high expectations for Greer going into the season just because of how great his freshman year was, and I think you can agree he looked like just a showstopper. But this year, giving up 4 runs to Alcorn State in his first game, and then giving up 2 to Xavier on Sunday on the Sunday game. I mean, he's definitely not where we want him just yet, but I'm glad that he's trying to iron out those kinks in games like this rather than playing in the LSU game and things like that and giving up 4 or 5 runs against teams like that.
And I think you got to remember, too, right? We talked about this last week. Baseball is an ebb and flow sport, and throughout the course of a season, you're going to have peaks and valleys. So I don't know if it's, it might be a little early to go ahead and pass judgment. It's only been a couple weeks into the season, so you just kind of have to let it play out. And I mean, like, he's a sophomore,
Yeah.
So
no, he's a senior.
Oh, he's a senior.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you said that last season was freshman for him, but no, it's still. I think with the ebb and flow of the season, you give it time, and if it's still an issue in 2 to 3 weeks, then you can say, okay, this has really been a bust for him. But it's just. It's a little bit early, I think, to pass judgment on him.
All right, thanks, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
for
sure.
Cole. We
Thanks,
appreciate
Cole.
it. Well, and look, I think we'll talk a little bit about baseball later in the show, but I still believe that you have to kind of accept the fact that with these sports that have longer seasons, that play so many games, it might be an off week or two, but it's to sit there and say, hey, he's been a bust or this has been a bad season for him, and I'm not sure if that's always accurate because he may very well rebound. It may just take one weekend series. This weekend he may completely bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just people thinking about how he was as a freshman, because he made one appearance last year as a junior. He was all right his sophomore year. His freshman year, he had 55 strikeouts. I believe it was and in his second career win, he struck out 7 batters in 5 innings. I was trying to see where I saw the, but I mean, he was not necessarily lights out, but a reliable pitcher his freshman year.
Right.
And this year, just getting him at the beginning of the season, like I said, against Alcorn State and Xavier, and him not looking the same at all. I think we definitely need to give him some time, try to get back, because with baseball, you don't necessarily go out on the mound and have that perfect pitch every time. You gotta go back and you gotta find it, especially not playing last season. So I think we just need to sit back and give him a little time.
And I agree. And to go back to Florida State to wrap up that conversation, you know, we had them at, I think about, they were 4-5. Then they had BC, Syracuse, and Florida. I think they're going to finish the season around 6-6 if they're lucky, if they're able to take care of BC and Syracuse on the road, which, you know, begs the question: is that acceptable for Mike Norvell? I mean, there'd be bowl eligibility there, but is he going to need to do more than 6-6? Should he do more than 6-6?
I mean, I think whenever you give a new coach, whenever you get a new coach, you have to kind of allow the first year to be some leniency when it comes to record and how they perform, just with what they're given, not necessarily what they acquire, but what they're given.
Right.
So I think 6-6 definitely is not that bad. And I think that if they do go 6-6, Norvell would definitely be able to build off that and tell recruits like, hey, look, I just stepped into this place and we're bowl eligible, and I'm looking to take this program back to where it was with 9-10 wins, things like that. And hey, I mean, if Lane Kiffin comes into Ole Miss and goes 6-6,
right,
then people will rally behind him, because
sure,
that will be the first bowl game that we've been to since the Sugar Bowl, I believe, in 2016.
Well, and that brings us into the next team that we're going to talk about here, which is Texas. And Texas is a school that, you know, look, since losing to Alabama in the BCS this is going to shock you. Since losing to Bama in the BCS championship in 2009, Texas has 0 Big 12 titles or college football playoff appearances. Only 1 season of 10 wins or more, and 3 top 25 finishes. Let me repeat that. Since 2009, Texas has finished in the top 25 3 times, which begs the question, Jason, why does everyone continue to say Texas is back? Now, yes, after 2018, Sam Ehlinger led Texas to a Sugar Bowl win over Georgia. They did drop to 7-5 this past season, but they beat Utah in the Alamo Bowl. But no Big 12 titles. And one could argue the Big 12 is one of the easiest conferences to win a title in right now.
Yeah,
it's wide open.
I would definitely agree.
Except for Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, but
Gotta get past Oklahoma.
Right, but Oklahoma might not be too hot coming up in the next year. But honestly, I think that Texas placed a lot of faith in Tom Herman, and
for sure.
I think that I'm not going to say it's misplaced, but I think that they placed a little too much faith in him rather than looking to build around Tom Herman. They just kind of put him in there and said, you know what, go ahead, go win us 10 games, go win us a championship.
And he's replaced a lot of his staff.
Yeah, I was just about to.
You know, I mean, he's definitely had both coordinators. So both coordinators have been replaced. And this is his fourth year at the helm at Texas. But yeah, it's just amazing to me because every time Texas wins a game of any significance, people say that they're back, and you know they're going to go on a run. And you look at the numbers in 11 seasons, 3 top 25 finishes, one which I think was this past season. They finished 25th, barely squeaking in there. And you talked about this too, all the faith that the Texas Longhorns put in Herman. Well, Michigan did the same thing with Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Florida State's going to do the same thing in Norvell. I mean, maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but look at Texas A&M. They haven't exactly blossomed into what everybody thought they were going to be. Right. I remember when Jimbo Fisher went to Texas A&M, and I was like, oh, Nick Saban's in trouble.
What was that? $10 million a year?
$10 million a year.
It was like $70 million for 7 years.
Something like that. And you look, it hasn't come to fruition. It hasn't come to fruition at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh. It hasn't happened at Texas with Herman. It hasn't happened in a lot of different places all over the country. So what do you think? What do you think Texas needs to do differently? You know, because we can look at their schedule here in a second, because it's not that rigorous. But they have a quarterback in Ellinger. Like, you know, we talked about Florida State earlier. They didn't have any quarterbacks,
Right.
at all. And so, like, that's an obvious fix. It's like, okay, guys, get a quarterback. But for Texas, they had Ellinger. They weren't able to put those pieces together, and they finished last season 8-5, a disappointing 8-5.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Texas really needs to focus more on their running back. Texas, because ever since they have gotten Sam Ellinger, they have been trying to do that air raid offense, and they've been trying to not necessarily play that nose grinding football. They've been trying to play the more spectacular game of like the downfield passes.
Oh, yeah.
And
Their lead rusher last year, Keontae Ingram, had only 144 carries for 853 yards.
Right. And I think that if you want to be a balanced, dangerous team with a quarterback as good as Sam Ellinger is, who shows that he can win big games against Georgia, I think that they definitely need some pieces around Sam Ellinger, like in the running back position, to make it where you don't know that they're going to throw the ball every play, or that they're just if it's a 3rd and 6, if you have a good running back, there's a chance you could have a draw play, or there's a chance you could go for the jet on the outside or the slant on the inside. But whenever you just have Ellinger, you know that they're going to play cover 2 and they're going to probably press because they're not going to run it.
He's coming back, right, for his senior year here, his last season at Texas. You know, I think there's definitely opportunities for the Longhorns. Now, look at their schedule really quick here. They got South Florida to open the season, and then they're going to get whomped. Are they, though? Maybe. By LSU, second game of the season, on the road for them, and then UTEP. Do you think they beat the Tigers? Do they have any chance? Any chance against LSU?
I mean, I'm not too sure. I think we have to look at this LSU team completely different than what they were last year, because they are losing the entire offensive line. Let's go ahead and say it. All they're going to have is Jamar Chase at wide receiver. Thaddeus Moss is gone. Obviously, Joe Burrow, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's just it's going to be a whole new offensive unit. I believe their backup quarterback, is from Mississippi, and I'm trying to Miles Brennan, and he was a 4-star out of high school, I believe. So it's going to be a challenging game for them, to say the least.
Well, absolutely, and we actually have a caller who's on here with us now. We got Jerry on the phone lines. Jerry, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, Jerry, what you got for us? Go ahead. I'm
just kind of concerned about Lane Kiffin. Like, I don't know what he's going to do with our offense. What do y'all think is going to happen? Like who's going to be the quarterback? And I'm just concerned about my Rebels. I just want y'all to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, we appreciate you calling in, Jerry. Thank you. You know, look, I think, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit before. Expectations are high because Lane Kiffin's a big name. People, you know, they know who he is. They know his history. If you're on Twitter, you've probably seen some of his tweets. He's a polarizing guy, and he's definitely going to bring a lot of attention to the program that may not have been as prevalent if another coach, like even Norvell, had ended up here.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kiffin, though, has reached a point in his career where he wants people to remember him by the achievements that he's had on the field.
For sure.
He's at the point now where he's had his fun and he's joked around. He's had a good time and all that, and he has a reputation. But I think now he wants to just settle into a program with a lot of history, a lot of legacy, SEC school, the opportunity to become a powerhouse again, or to become nationally relevant on a year-in, year-out basis. And I think, honestly, when it comes to the quarterback situation, you might have to wait until spring ball to really see. Because, we all know that during practices, they're going back and forth. Each of them are taking reps, and there's a discussion, probably an ongoing discussion. A good comparison, I would say honestly, is to what happened with Clemson, with Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant, where it was an ongoing, even throughout the season. They had the first 4 games there before Trevor Lawrence got named the starter at Clemson. So, if it was me, I wouldn't really worry too much about who gets named the starter, because at the end of the day, Kiffin should feel confident enough in whoever he puts on the field to get the job done, to make the play, to lead the guys to victory. I mean, Jason, you and I talk about this. Being a leader is just as important as being a dynamic playmaker.
Right, and to Jerry's question, I mean, also, Jay, you were saying you might have to wait till spring ball. I think you might even have to wait longer than that, just because of John Rice Plumlee being in baseball season at the moment. Matt Corral getting reps while he's only preparing for football. So I think that you're going to have to wait a little while, but I think I'm trusting Lane Kiffin to make the best decision at the quarterback position, and once he makes that decision, to see where he can put the other athlete, whether or not it's Matt Corral at starting quarterback and John Rice Plumlee at an athletic position. I think that Lane Kiffin is going to utilize both of the players and the backups, Kincaid, Dent, all that he can. He's going to evaluate the talent that he has and distribute it accordingly. So I don't think that
I hear you. That's a good perspective. But I'm just worried he ain't gonna stay. Dude's sketchy. Is he gonna be around? You think?
Yeah. See, and again, I personally think that Kiffin is at that point in his career where he wants to settle down at a program. I mean, what is he now? Is he in his 40s, or is he in his late? I think he's in his 40s. I think Kiffin is in his 40s. I mean, he'll be coaching for another 15, 20, maybe 30 years or so. But look, he's been to a bunch of big name schools, and he's had short stints at all of them. But what does Lane Kiffin have in the trophy case? And I think he realizes that there's an opportunity here. He might be built a little bit from the ground up, because of some NCAA, probation rules and all that. But he has an opportunity here, and hopefully the administration is behind him and is willing to wait. Because, look, there's so many coaches that have become great that didn't start out completely on fire at their respective schools. I mean, I've just used the Clemson example. Dabo, I mean, he lost South Carolina 5 straight years. We were kind of on the bubble. I mean, we weren't competing for ACC titles. And then, man, year 5, year 6, through where it is now, I mean, it's totally different program. You give that coach the time to shape the culture. You give, the backing from the administration, and the fans are patient. And I think Lane Kiffin is going to be a successful coach here. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to.
I feel a little better. I appreciate it.
All right, well,
Absolutely,
thanks
Jerry.
so much, my man, Jerry.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it.
And going off that, I think we really just have to give Lane Kiffin at least a couple years. And I've heard talks of people saying, Lane Kiffin's only going to stay at Ole Miss a couple years, and then he's going to go somewhere else, things like that. But I think Lane Kiffin's agenda includes winning at the very least an SEC championship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before he tries to go to a higher school, a school that's more known for greater success, I guess. But
and look, you can turn Ole Miss into a top job in the country.
Right.
It is absolutely doable. I mean, you look at Kiffin's pedigree. Okay, he's 44. Kiffin is 44. You look at where he's been. He was at Florida Atlantic 2017, 2019, and Alabama as an offensive coordinator, 3 years at USC, that 1 year, the infamous year at Tennessee, even in the Oakland Raiders for a little while. He's been all, Jacksonville Jaguars, Fresno State, Colorado State. He's been all over. But when you sit down and you look at his resume, you go, okay, this guy's only been at one place for no more than 2 to 3 years at a time. He's been in coaching since 1997. It's been 23 years. He is ready, and I believe he's hungry to try and hammer out a successful program and stay for the long haul. And I think he can accomplish that here.
I mean, I believe so too, and I think Lane Kiffin's going to be riding on the. I think Lane Kiffin's going to be riding on the reputation that Ole Miss has as being the nasty wideouts, of having like the just ridiculous talent at the wideout position. So I think that's what he's going to attack in these upcoming years of recruitment, and I think that he'll be able to accomplish a lot, even just in his first couple of years.
Absolutely. Well, hey, we got to take one final quick break, but stick around. We got a lot more to talk about on the other side of the break. So much we're going to get to. That's next. Stick with us. Welcome back to the show. AFR is on your radio. Jay Smith here with Jason Price in the Rebel Radio 92.1 studios. Again, thanks for spending your Tuesday afternoon with us. We're almost out of time. I'm not sure. How does this happen, Jason? We start talking, and then all of a sudden, we got a few minutes left in the show.
I mean, time flies when you're debating. Isn't that the saying? It's something along those lines.
And when you're having fun, and we certainly do have a lot of fun bringing you AFR every Tuesday. We got to talk to Will Day at the top of the hour. Will is a student worker over in Ole Miss Sports Productions, OMSP, and it was really interesting to kind of pick his brain, get his perspective on a really unique job. And look, we've talked a lot today about everybody from Mike Norvell at Florida State to Texas Longhorns and Tom Herman and what those programs need to do to kind of turn the page. We even threw a little bit of baseball talk in there with a couple of callers. So it's been a fun afternoon. But to wrap this up, we have a few minutes left. And we can go ahead and spin this now, touching on, we're going to do the Price is Wrong, Price is Right.
Let's
sir. Hear the hot takes.
Here it comes. All right. So this segment is called The Price is Close Enough, and I will make a hot take. And obviously, my name is Jason Price, and Jay Smith will tell me if the price is right, the price is wrong, or if the price is just close enough. So today, Jay, I am going to make the hot take of next season will be Kermit Davis's last season at Ole Miss.
Oh, well, I want to say the price is right, but I don't think he lasts through next season.
Wow. Okay.
I don't think he lasts through next. Look, and I'm not just saying that because of the fact that he got tossed a couple of games ago. I think it was the Alabama game. He got tossed within the or it was like the final 15 minutes. I think he was in the locker room. I don't know him personally. I don't know his temperament. I can tell you who's extremely fiery is a Frank Martin kind of guy of South Carolina.
Right.
I mean, that man can get intense. But and I think Kermit Davis is a good person, but I think it's kind of similar to Matt Luke.
Yeah.
You can be a great person. You can also be a not great coach.
Right.
And I just don't think there's enough. When you sit down, if you're an athletic director and you have to make a decision on whether or not you want to keep a coach around, renew a contract, give him an extension, you need to make a pros and cons list, right? Mm-hmm. And the pros of Kermit Davis are the program's relatively clean.
We've been to the NCAA tournament
in
his first year.
Yeah, no major scandals,
right?
No major recruiting issues, nothing that we know of.
Yeah,
hopefully, and all that's great, squeaky clean. That's awesome. But when you look at the cons, you go, okay, where's the consistency? Where is the ability to finish a game?
Yes,
we have harped on that repeatedly. I feel like I'm a broken record at this point. Finishing those games, the Auburn game.
Man,
I was sitting there watching it on my couch, and I was like, Ole Miss should win this basketball game. Ole Miss could win this basketball game, and then Ole Miss didn't win that basketball game. And it's just, again, it's nothing against that coach personally. I just don't think, and the reason I'm saying the price is wrong, and I think that he's gone before next season, the only reason is because Keith Carter, the new athletic director, has shown early on a lot of willingness to kind of part with the old and bring in the new. We have a new volleyball coach. We have a new softball coach. We have a new football coach. There's a lot of changes,
right,
internally and externally within the athletic department right now at Ole Miss. And unless Kermit Davis can build a compelling case in the SEC tournament or do something postseason, if it's more of the same of this next season, I don't think his chances are good.
Yeah, I mean, I think Keith Carter will give him at least one more year if Ole Miss is able to beat Missouri in their final game of the season tomorrow. I think Keith Carter will give him one more year, but with the recruiting class that Ole Miss has at the moment, we have 1 4-star, that's Matthew Morrell, and the only other hard commit that we have is Marcus Nieblak, who is a 3-star, and that's it. I mean, like that, and we are the SEC. We are ranked 10th in the SEC for recruiting classes, the 2020 basketball commits, and we are ranked 58th nationally. And so, I mean, I just don't see. I see Coach Kermit Davis getting through next season because I don't see them firing him in the middle of the season. But I think
he's not going to give him a reason to give him an extension next season. There's the pros and cons list. There's just not enough there.
Yeah.
I don't think there's not enough there.
I mean, and I think he's gone. I think he's gone after next season, but I think he will make it through the season. I will give him through the season, but that's all about the time that he has, and it's looking like that might be all the time that we have, Jay.
I know. Look, time is up. Only do an hour show, so it flies by super quick. But always enjoy bringing you another edition of After Further Review. Hey, if you want to connect with us on social media, we are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at After Review Show, and we are on Spotify. If you want to listen to our podcast, that is After Further Review on Spotify, soon to be on iTunes. So looking forward to that as well. But yeah. For Jason Price, I'm Jay Smith, and this has been another edition of After Further Review. Thanks for listening.
Have a good one, guys.
WUMS, University, Oxford.